What Russia has gained and lost so far in Ukraine, visualized. For weeks, Russia has struggled to make any territorial advances in Ukraine. Russian troops have retreated from key areas in the east and the south, most recently from the city of Kherson. The Kremlin's early objective to quickly take control of all of Ukraine may have been too ambitious, according to Max Bergmann, director of the Europe program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Now what Russia is trying to do is not necessarily gain more territory. It's just hold on to what they have, Bergmann said. U.S. government officials expected the war to be over in days. It has so far lasted nearly 9 months. Russia did not expect the conflict to last this long either. That was the Kremlin's original sin, according to Mason Clark, a senior analyst at the Institute for the Study of War. What has impeded Russian advances is that they did not prepare to have to fight for so long, Clark said. A Washington Post analysis of data from the Institute for the Study of War shows that, after aggressive advances in the first weeks of war, Russia hasn't gained more than 1,000 square miles in a week since April. Ukrainian soldiers reclaimed the Kherson area after Moscow's November 11th retreat, marking the biggest victory for Ukraine in the war so far and Russia's third major blow, after its troops withdrew from the north in April and then from Kharkiv in September. Russia's struggles to make advances are a direct consequence of the costly initial phase of the war, according to Cheese's Bergmann. Tens of thousands of its troops were killed and a significant amount of its equipment was destroyed. After failing to seize Kyiv, the Kremlin was left with poorly equipped, poorly manned units that aren't quite fulsome in the field, Bergmann said. Many of the resources are exhausted and they haven't been rotated out. After Russia lost resources in Ukraine, it hit a long plateau, unable to make any significant gains. Since early September, the plateau has turned into a downward trend, with Russian forces consistently losing territory. Russian-controlled territory in context. Ukraine's territory is about the same size as the state of Texas, or 6% of the United States. Although Ukraine can seem small when compared with the United States, it's considered large in European standards, the second largest country, in fact, after Russia. Before the war, Moscow controlled about 17,000 square miles of Ukraine's land, split up into Crimea, annexed by the Kremlin in 2014, and the separatist-controlled areas of Donetsk and Luhansk. By the end of the fourth week of the war, Russia controlled the most land since its invasion, about 51,000 square miles, or 22% of Ukraine. In the United States, this percentage would be the equivalent to the entire Midwest and some more. As of November 17, Russia controlled some 40,000 square miles in Ukraine, mainly in the east and south. That's about 17% of the country, the lowest percentage controlled by Moscow since April. What comes next? Analysts say Russian President Vladimir Putin's strategy is aimed at exhausting and outlasting Ukrainian troops, with the aim of decreasing allies' confidence in Ukraine's capabilities, all the while strengthening and training new forces. The Russian forces might be able to take some territory around Donetsk, but I certainly don't think they are going to achieve any decisive breakthroughs, which they haven't for months and months in the war, Clark said. Despite Ukraine's victory in Kherson, reclaiming the east will be a difficult and phased task. It's going to require several counteroffensives more to actually retake more Russian-occupied territory, Clark said. While momentum seems to be on Ukraine's side, the shape the war will take in the coming months still hangs in the balance. To Bergmann, the main question is whether Ukraine will be able to keep advancing in the weeks before the winter, when the rain and mud usually make military movements more difficult. There's a lot still to play for in this conflict and it's very uncertain which direction it will go, he said. Data from the Institute for the Study of War, as of November 17. Editing by Emily Eng, Kim Mecco, Kate Rabinowitz, and Ree McCad. Copy editing by Vanessa Larson. Russia has suffered a major defeat in the south of Ukraine, withdrawing from the western Kherson region. Here are the latest developments. The city of Kherson has been liberated by Ukrainian troops. The loss of the city is a major setback for Russia. Ukraine's latest advance comes after weeks of attacks on Russian-controlled bridges and other positions around Kherson. Elsewhere in Ukraine, fighting continues in Donetsk as Russian forces attempt to advance towards Bakhmut. Ukrainian success in Kherson. Ukrainian troops have won a major victory against Russia, taking control of the western Kherson region, including Kherson city. The latest Ukrainian advance came after months of successful attacks on Russian positions on the west side of the Dnieper River, aimed at disrupting Russian supply lines. Ukrainian targets included bridges across the river, as well as the roads, pontoons, barges and landing areas. Ukraine's success in Kherson resulted in large part from the Ukrainian Armed Forces, WAF's, innovative use of the U.S.-provided HIMARS precision rocket system, according to Institute for the Study of War, ISW. Multiple precision strikes using HIMARS made Russian positions on the west side of the river impossible to resupply. Also in the south, Russia has continued air, missile and artillery strikes in recent days, with targets including Zaporizhzhia city. Ukraine says it has also struck Russian positions in Zaporizhzhia region. Russian forces are forcibly mobilizing men in Melitopol and Zaporizhzhia and forcing them to construct trenches and other defenses, according to the ISW. Intense fighting in the east. Russian forces are continuing to conduct ground attacks near Bakhmut and Siversk. Ukraine says it has successfully held off the latest assaults, with intense fighting concentrated on the road network. Ukrainian troops took control of the key logistical hub of Lyman in Donetsk at the beginning of October. Russian forces operating in the east are believed to include regular Russian troops, mobilized servicemen, Wagner private contractors, Chechen units and personnel from the so-called Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics.